This week, we wanted to show you how to make oyster sauce at home. Now, oyster sauce is, at its core, a reduction of the poaching liquid from making dried oysters, so it really doesn't make sense to make it yourself unless you're sun-drying oysters anyhow. So today, in addition to showing you the sauce, we'll show you how to make dried oysters, and in case you're unfamiliar with the ingredient, show you how to use them in a great, pretty easy homestyle Cantonese dish, oyster braised pork ribs. Before we get into it though, a quick word on oyster sauce consistency.
So the more traditional type of oyster sauce is actually not that thick. This is our locally produced, made in Shenzhen, Shajing oyster sauce. So here, while the more popular Li Kempi one, it's way thicker.
So right, to get started with making oyster sauce, you'll need oysters. This is 1.5 kilos of shucked Pacific oysters. We'll need to give them a quick rinse, so transfer to a pot with a bit of tap water. No need to go too crazy here. We'll be filtering this later too, and we do want some of that brininess. And if you're using clean, freshly shucked oysters, feel free to skip this step entirely. Now get about 4.5 liters of water to a gentle simmer and transfer the oysters over in a dangling motion to minimize moving over any sediment. Over a medium-low flame, keep them moving periodically and make sure that the water doesn't boil. You want them cooked, but rapidly bubbling water can destroy the integrity of the oyster. Leave those to poach for 30 minutes. And 30 minutes later, the oysters are done. We're using one of these cool bamboo strainers, but you could totally use a baking sheet. Just remove the oysters and let them dry out a touch. Now, if the weather's not cooperating, you can absolutely dry these in a cracked oven, but it's a beautiful day here in Shenzhen, China, so we'll do this the proper way. Find a sunny spot, and if you're living in a city, it's a good idea to hang it so that bugs and cats can't get to it. Simply leave it there for a day to dry, flipping them once around noontime, and that's it. Back to the oyster sauce, pass the liquid through a fine mesh strainer lined with a tofu or cheesecloth into a lightly oiled stainless steel pot. Now grab a spatula. I like using one of these rubber guys, and buckle in. This has got to simmer away for 3 to 4 hours. In order to ensure that you're not losing too much oystery goodness to the sides of the pot, it does tend to stick. Make sure that this is going at a really light simmer and that you periodically, every 5 or 10 minutes, scrape the sides down with the spatula. And 2 hours later, this is what we're looking at. It's reduced by about half and the liquid's starting to change color. Now, the reason oyster sauce doesn't cost $50 a bottle is that industrial producers will usually stop here, adding caramel for color and a mix of starch and cellulose gum to thicken. But at home, we'll keep this old school, make sure the flame's on low, and keep a watchful eye on things. And 1 hour later, the oyster sauce is almost finished. We're looking at about a third of a cup or so. So season it with a half tablespoon sugar and an optional teaspoon of soy sauce for color. And to get a little of that thickness you might expect from oyster sauce, I personally like adding a dollop, about a half a teaspoon, of that gloopy, mass-produced oyster sauce to help everything come together. Cook for about 2 minutes, and the oyster sauce is done. Transfer, and you've got yourself some oyster sauce. So back to those dried oysters. This was yesterday's test batch, and as you can see, you'll get like a mountain of them. So let's show you how to make that oyster braised pork. First, take 50 grams of dried oysters and add in 1 cup of hot boiled water to reconstitute. Let that sit for at least 45 minutes. Now get some pork ribs. This was about a half a kilo, and marinate with a half tablespoon salt, 1 tablespoon sugar, 2 teaspoons cornstarch mixed with a tablespoon of rice wine to make a quick slurry, a half tablespoon light soy sauce, and to repeat the oyster flavor, 1 tablespoon of our homemade oyster sauce. Mix well, and let that marinate for at least 30 minutes. And once those are all good, we can fry. As always, first, lang yao. Get that wok piping hot, shut off the heat, add in the oil, here about a tablespoon, and give it a swirl to get a nice nonstick surface. Heat on high now. Add in 3 lightly smashed cloves of garlic. Give it a quick stir, then go in with the pork ribs. Fry for about a minute, stirring only periodically to develop a bit of browning. Then go in with a tablespoon of rice wine, pouring over a spatula and around the sides of the wok. Give it a quick mix, then go in with the reconstituted oysters. Fry for about 15 seconds, then pour in the oyster soaking liquid. Brief stir, then go in with some seasoning. This was 2 teaspoons light soy sauce, 1 teaspoon dark soy sauce for color, a half a tablespoon sugar, and 1 tablespoon oyster sauce. Toss that in, Combine for about 15 seconds, then shut off the heat and transfer over to a clay pot or some other braising vessel. With the flame on low now, add in 3 more tablespoons of rice wine, arrange the ribs to be relatively even, cover, and let that go for 30 minutes, checking on and flipping the ribs at the 20-minute mark. And 30 minutes later, the ribs are done. Awesome, perfectly cooked pork ribs with a healthy hit of umami from those oysters.
So for the dry oysters, you can also put it in congee, so soups that would give it really nice umami flavor. As for the stew, you can swap the pork ribs with bone-in chicken, or you can also just use chicken wings. That would be great too.